I'm Robert Pearson, and this is Follow the Leader, doing another morning musings. This seems to be a decent format that can work all right. I'm going to keep at it. Just whatever it is I'm thinking about this morning, and I try to keep it moderately profound. I'm just an electrician, though, so what do I know? Of course, everybody's talking about the Epstein being suicided, but it got me thinking about something else that I call the king problem. Why is it that there are just a profound amount of just mindless sociopaths and pedophiles at just the highest levels of everything, forever? And I think it's the king problem. So not only are those the types of people willing to do everything to achieve and maintain power, they're just willing to do anything and everything to achieve and maintain power. Oh man. And but it kind of turns you into one. If you think about it, you have the ability to do literally anything you want at all, forever, and no one would question you. In fact, everybody around you would tell you you're great for doing it. And that it's awesome. Ah! The traffic is terrible here. Okay. Everybody would tell you you're awesome forever for doing it. Just, let's pick something innocuous. Say you really enjoy eating Twinkies. It's not great for you, but it's not going to kill you every once in a while. But what if you had the ability to just eat 75 Twinkies a day? Unquestioned. In fact, you could have your own chef hand make you Twinkies from just the finest ingredients. You could, there's no end to it. It's very tempting. Put that now in literally every other context of any possible desire, and you can fulfill it as much as you want and as often as you want, just for the rest of your life. That's the king problem. It's enough to turn any normal person into, well, maybe. I think it's, now let's add to that. Let's say you're a moral man who is in charge of his own desires. Cool. Now understand that you're the one in power. You're the one in charge. You're where everybody else wants to be. And so now literally every other human you will ever interact with could at all times be a godless sociopath waiting to manipulate you and use you, or to just murder you and take your place. Everybody, family member, friends you've known for 10, 20 years, at the drop of a hat now that you're in power. Anybody you know could be a secret monster, just waiting. Anybody you put in a position of other, power under you, you're not watching them all the time. They could be using that power then for their own ends. For their own king problem, right? Their own ends. They could be attempting to satisfy whatever desires that they have. Because you're at the top. So even like the number 5 man is still at the top of a lot of stuff and could do almost whatever he wants. There's a huge incentive to just be heartless and unfeeling and do whatever you want. And there's a huge issue that even if you are a moral man, you now have to be on guard at all times, or just be easily manipulated and assassinated. That's it, because you can't ever trust anyone fully, ever, for the rest of your life. It's horribly isolating. And so that's what I term the king problem, is you're either going to indulge into your own desires or become just like absolutely insane and incapable of trusting or caring for anyone ever again. It's those are basically the only two roads for people this at the highest level of powers, because it's what's going down for celebrities, for high-level politicians, even for like a mayor on a smaller scale of being able to. But even just a really, really rich guy who got rich from some innocuous means has that temptation of being able to satisfy whatever desire he has forever. And then anybody who he interacts with that isn't at least as rich as he is probably wants something from him. They want to use him for his money or somehow take what he has. And then the people that are as rich as you might be playing some kind of weird power game. So you don't know. It's that's what I term the king problem. Is it just really take a minute and imagine being somebody at the top. I'm convinced that this is, while not the entirety of, this is definitely an aspect of what Jesus had in mind when he said that it is harder for a rich man, for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And I think this is very clearly at the forefront of James's conversation in chapter 2 or chapter 3. One chapter he's talking about the tongue as a fire and a rudder on a boat, and the other chapter he's talking about treating poor people right. And I always forget which is chapter 2 and which is chapter 3. But he says, "If God not chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith?" And he talks about how you have to treat the poor people properly. And it makes sense that if you're poor, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff because you got other problems, man. If you're doing what you can to just get rent, just get food for the next day, as long as you've got enough that you're not worried about stealing to live, you're all right. You're not having to worry about taking flights on the Lolita Express or something. So it makes sense that when you're at that high level, it's difficult, basically impossible to be moral. And if you do remain a moral person at that high level, then it's very likely you're going to be eventually trust the wrong person and be usurped or assassinated, or trust no one and slowly go insane because you cannot trust anyone. Everything that anyone ever says has to be weighed as whether or not they're trying to manipulate you. And so that's why it makes sense then when you look at the kings of old and they want the king to be true. The king has to know all of this stuff, war strategy. He's got to know ancient history for himself. He's got to know and be properly educated on politics and foreign relations. And he has to be the one to know all this stuff because he cannot trust his advisors ever, 100%. He's got to know enough to know when they're trying to pull the wool over his eyes. He has to know enough that he can catch the experts when they're trying to trick him. Or just, get usurped and overthrown, or just indulge in hedonism and become a puppet for whoever's running that rigmarole. In our analogy, if you indulge in Twinkies every day, suddenly the Twinkie chef gets an inordinate amount of influence over you. So it's just interesting to me. Like, to really think about and put yourself in the emotional spot of somebody at that high level, it makes perfect sense why so many of them would collapse into nihilism and sociopathy. It's interesting. So that's all I got this morning rattling around in my brain. Obviously never believe the news. And I hope I shared something mildly insightful this morning. I've got peanut butter and jelly here calling my name for breakfast. Never take my word for it. I will see you next time. Godspeed.